Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? This time we're going behind the scenes of video game development.
Behind the scenes is right. We've been checking out this series on YouTube from Kaze Emanuar.
Yeah, you might know him as Kaze Clips.
Right, Case Clips?
Harry.
He's been documenting his whole process of making a custom Nintendo 64 game.
It's like we're right there in his workshop with him, seeing all the raw footage, the struggles, the triumphs.
Definitely not the kind of polished stuff you see in a finished game.
And Kaze himself is such a character.
Oh, yeah.
He's funny, he's opinionated, he does not hold back.
That's for sure.
And he's got this obvious love for what he's doing. You really get a sense of his personality, like when he's going on about budgeting being for poor people.
Classic Case.
Exactly. It reminds you that game development, it's not just code and algorithm.
It's people.
Real people with passions and quirks and a sense of humor.
And you can see how that passion drives his work.
Definitely. He's constantly experimenting, refining his ideas, even totally scrapping stuff if it's not working.
Like that drawing Mario star in Course 14. Remember that?
Oh yeah, he had this whole elaborate concept where you'd step in paint puddles to draw Mario's outline.
But then he realized it was just way too complex.
And he went with something simpler and honestly more fun.
It's that iterative process.
Yeah.
You know, not aiming for perfection right out of the gate,
Yeah.
but getting a playable version out there and then refining it based on feedback.
And speaking of feedback, he takes what his viewers say seriously.
Oh, totally. He's always engaging with them in the comments and even using their suggestions to shape the game.
Remember that back and forth he had with someone about the snow effect in Course 13?
Oh, yeah, they got pretty deep in the weeds talking about RSP versus RDP bottlenecks.
I have to admit I was lost on that one.
Basically, it's about the limitations of the N64's processor.
How it handles all those graphics.
Exactly. And Kaz, he actually explained it pretty well. He said to think of it like a traffic jam on a highway.
Too many cars trying to get through a narrow bottleneck.
And everything slows down.
It makes you appreciate the challenges of developing for the N64.
Oh, for sure. Limited processing power, limited memory. You're constantly battling those constraints.
Like that whole saga with the disappearing enemies.
Oh man, hours he spent on that.
And it turned out to be a conflict between the styrofoam and grass textures.
Who knew? But that's the N64 for you.
Every little detail matters.
You have to be so strategic about how you design and optimize the game.
Speaking of design, he mentioned something called collision triangles.
Oh yeah, that's a big one for level design.
So basically, the N64 can only handle so much complexity when it comes to objects the player can interact with.
Too many triangles, which are like the building blocks of 3D objects, and the game starts to chug.
So he has to be really careful about which elements are touchable and which are just for show.
Exactly. It forces you to be more creative with your level design.
And you can definitely see his philosophy there. He's all about consistent physics and movement favoring platforming challenges over gimmicks.
He even called out the original Banjo-Kazooie for being too gimmicky.
He wants the player to master a skill set and feel like they're really in control.
And the world he creates it feels so interconnected.
Like in Course 14, which he described as having a Metroid-like feel.
Different areas connecting to each other, rewarding exploration.
Which is pretty impressive on the N64, considering how linear a lot of games on that system were.
It's like he's pushing the boundaries of what the hardware can do.
And don't forget about the Leaf Bowls debacle in Course 2.
Oh yeah, he almost scrapped that entire section.
Because it just wasn't fun.
It's another example of him putting the player experience first.
He ended up replacing it with this cool platforming playground, which looks way more dynamic and engaging.
And beyond all the technical stuff and design choices, we also get these glimpses into his personal opinions.
Like his strong preference for GameCube controllers over N64 ones.
Seriously, who knew?
Or his thoughts on open source software.
It's these unexpected insights that make these videos so fascinating.
It's not just about game development, it's about the mind of the developer.
And that's something you don't get to see very often.
It makes you appreciate the whole process even more.
Definitely. It's a reminder that there are real people behind these games. People with passions and ideas and a whole lot of talent.
And sometimes a quirky sense of humor.
That's Kaze for you. Makes
Yeah.
you think about how much detail goes into a good game.
Right. Like even the lighting can make a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. Like that ice castle level he was talking about.
So atmospheric.
He wanted to make it feel really gloomy, right? And he talks about how he put the star behind that wall of ice so you don't see it right away.
Yeah.
And the way that Raven Boss slowly comes out from behind it, blocking out the moon,
That's so cool.
adds so much to the whole mood.
It's like he's using every element to tell a story.
Exactly. Game development is an art form.
And sometimes that art involves wrestling with some tricky technical
Oh,
stuff.
for sure. Remember when he was talking about the ice slide in Course 13?
Yeah, it was behaving all weird, like,
Super glitchy.
and it turned out to be something with the alpha check in the code.
Ah, yes, the alpha check. Basically affects how transparent objects are rendered.
So one little coding error can throw everything off.
It's those little things that can drive you crazy as a developer.
And even when you've got the technical stuff figured out, you still need to be creative.
Oh, totally. It's a constant challenge to come up with new ideas and keep things fresh.
I laughed when he was talking about placing those Yoshi coins in the cardboard castle level.
He's like, I'm running out of ideas. I'm just going to hide them randomly.
But it makes you realize how much creativity goes into every aspect of game design.
Definitely. You can't just rely on the same old tricks.
Especially on a system like the N64 where you're working with limited resources.
Speaking of N64 limitations, remember that discussion about collision detection?
Oh yeah, he mentioned something about collision triangles.
Right, so the N64 can only handle so many of those, which are basically the points that define an object's shape for collision.
So if you want a lot of interactive elements in your level,
You got to be strategic about how you use those triangles.
that's like a puzzle.
You have to think about every object and how it interacts with the player.
He gave the example of the first star in Course 13.
How he placed it so players would see it immediately.
Simple but effective.
Exactly. It guides the player without feeling too forced.
It all goes back to his design philosophy, right?
Clear path for the player's sense of accomplishment as they progress.
Makes you feel like you're actually good at the game.
And beyond the gameplay itself, we get these glimpses into his thoughts on bigger issues.
Like his views on AI.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. He's pretty cautious about using AI-generated content,
Worried about the ethical implications.
especially as AI gets more and more powerful.
It makes you think about the future of game development.
And the role of human creativity in a world where machines can do so much.
Definitely a lot to ponder there.
But for now, let's get back to the game itself.
Okay, so what else stood out to you about Kaze's approach?
Well, I thought it was interesting how he talked about that initial level design phase.
It's a blockout phase.
Yeah, he uses basic shapes to sketch out the level and get the flow down before adding any details.
Kind of like building a skeleton.
Exactly. You wouldn't want to waste time on fancy visuals if the level design isn't working.
Makes sense. Focus on the fundamentals first.
And that's especially important on a system like the N64 with its limitations.
He mentioned having to cut some features because they were taking up too much memory.
Tough choices, but sometimes necessary.
You gotta prioritize what's essential to the game's vision.
And that's where playtesting comes in.
He's got a group of friends who test the game and give him feedback.
So valuable to get that outside perspective.
You can get so caught up in your own head as a developer.
You need fresh eyes to catch things you might have missed.
And it sounds like his playtesters have helped him refine the difficulty and balance of the game,
It's a collaborative process.
and that sense of community really comes through in his videos.
You can tell he values his viewers' input.
And they were definitely hyped when he finally revealed that intro cutscene.
Oh man, that was epic.
So cinematic.
Sets the stage for the whole adventure.
And introduces the main characters.
That's like a mini movie.
It adds another dimension to the game.
Reminds you that games can tell stories too.
And speaking of visuals, his art style is so unique.
That blend of hand-drawn textures and 3D models,
It's got that nostalgic N64 feel, but with a modern twist.
it's like he's created his own signature look.
And he's really intentional about using it to create atmosphere.
Like in the factory level, where he uses those fast-paced electronic tracks.
Oh yeah, that music really amps up the energy.
Makes you feel like you gotta keep moving.
And then in the underwater level, he added those subtle bubbling sounds.
So immersive.
You can almost feel the water around you.
It's those little touches that make all the difference.
And speaking of little touches, let's not forget about that time the water animation went haywire.
Oh yeah, it ended up looking like boiling water.
Classic game dev blunder.
But it just goes to show that even with all the technical skills in the world,
Things can still go wrong.
it's all part of the process.
And it makes you appreciate how much work goes into making a game look and feel polished.
Especially on a system like the N64.
He mentioned having to really optimize the code to get the game running smoothly.
It's like squeezing every last bit of performance out of that hardware.
It's impressive what he's been able to accomplish.
Definitely shows a deep understanding of the N64's architecture.
It's not just about coding. It's about understanding how the machine works on a fundamental level.
And pushing those limits to create something special.
And that's what Kaze has done here. He's created a game that feels both classic and innovative.
He's taken inspiration from the past, but he's also pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the N64.
It's a testament to his dedication and his passion for game development.
And that passion shines through in every aspect of the game.
From the level design to the art style to the music.
It's a labor of love.
And it's clear that he's put his heart and soul into it.
And it's not just him working in isolation either.
He's got that whole community of supporters who are following his journey and giving him feedback.
It's a reminder that game development can be a collaborative process.
Even when you're working solo.
You can still connect with others and build something amazing together.
And that's ultimately what makes Kaze's story so inspiring.
It shows that with enough passion and dedication,
Anyone can create something truly special. And it all comes back to the human element, right? Even in this digital world, it's the people behind the games that make them special.
definitely. And with Kaze, you see that human element, not just in his personality, but in the choices he makes as a developer.
Like how he's so committed to making challenging but fair levels,
Yeah, he talked about hating those cheap tricks and instant death traps.
which I think we can all agree are the worst.
He wants you to feel like you're actually getting better at the game, not just getting lucky.
And remember how he said his favorite level is the ice castle?
Oh yeah, he's really proud of that one.
And it's not just because it looks amazing, but because it really nails that balance of aesthetics and challenge.
He said he spent weeks getting the lighting and atmosphere just right. It shows how much he cares about creating that immersive experience for the player.
And it's not just the visuals either. He talked about how much attention he pays to the music.
Oh yeah, music can make or break a game.
Like in the factory level, he used that fast-paced electronic track to create a sense of urgency.
Totally changes the whole mood.
You feel like you gotta be on your toes the whole time.
And then in the underwater level, he added those subtle bubbling sounds.
It's crazy how effective something that small can be.
It just adds that extra layer of immersion.
Makes you feel like you're actually underwater.
And then there are those moments where, even with all his attention to detail, things don't quite go as planned.
Like that time the water animation went totally bonkers.
It ended up looking like boiling water.
I lost it when I saw that.
You gotta laugh at those moments, right?
Definitely. It's a reminder that even the best developers make mistakes.
And sometimes those mistakes lead to hilarious results.
It also highlights how much harder it is to work with older hardware.
Oh yeah, the N64 may not be as powerful as modern consoles, but that just forces you to be more creative.
You gotta come up with clever workarounds and really understand the limitations.
Because he's clearly got that down.
He mentioned having to do a lot of code optimization to get the game running smoothly.
Squeezing every ounce of performance out of that old N64.
It makes you appreciate the technical skills that go into game development.
It's not just about having cool ideas. It's about knowing how to bring those ideas to life.
And Kaze, he's got the technical chops for sure.
But it's more than just technical skill.
There's that artistic vision too.
That ability to create a world that feels unique and engaging.
And he's been so open about the whole process too.
Sharing the ups and downs, the challenges and triumphs.
It's inspiring to see that level of transparency.
It makes you realize that game development, it's not always glamorous.
There's a lot of hard work and dedication involved.
And setbacks along the way.
But it's also incredibly rewarding.
Especially when you see your vision come to life.
And when you have a community of supporters cheering you on.
Yeah, Kaze's relationship with his viewers is really special.
He takes their feedback to heart, and they're genuinely invested in the game's success.
It's like they're all on this journey together.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating.
We've gotten to see firsthand what goes into making a video game.
The technical challenges, the creative decisions, the sheer amount of work involved.
And we've also gotten to know the person behind the game.
Kaze Emanuar, a talented developer with a passion for his craft and a quirky sense of humor.
He's given us a glimpse into his world.
And it's a world that's full of creativity and inspiration.
So what we've seen here is just one developer's story. But it raises some interesting questions about game development as a whole. How do you think these technical realities, these creative choices, shape the kinds of games we play?
It's something to think about as you play your next game. Maybe you'll see it with a new appreciation for the people behind it. And who knows, maybe it'll even inspire you to try creating your own games. There's so many tools out there now, even for beginners, that can let you experience this amazing process for yourself.
And until then, keep exploring, keep playing, and keep that love of games alive. This has been an awesome deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.